friendly neighborhood bibliothecary Morgan. I'm taking a short break from Dragon Age the Veilguard to continue our read-through of the in-game Codex entries from the first 3 Dragon Age games. Today we're going to be reading about the First Blight, as written by Brother Genitivi in his work, Tales of the Destruction of Thedas. So, without further ado, grab your cuppa, make yourself comfortable, and let's start reading. The First Blight, by Brother Genitivi, Tales of the Destruction of Thedas. Chapter 1. Thedas is a land of fierce diversity, from the assassin princes of Antiva to the fated griffins of the Anderfels. But in my travels I have found one tale that unites the people of this land. It is a story of pride and damnation, and although the telling differs, the essence of the tale remains the same. At the height of its power, the Tevinter Imperium stretched over much of Thedas, uniting the known world under the rule of the tyrannical Magisters. It is said that the old gods whom the Magisters worshipped gave them the knowledge of blood magic. The Magisters used this forbidden power to cement their rule. Blood of elven slaves and humans alike ran down imperial altars to fuel Magister greed. The tales of their excess so horrifying, one can only be grateful that blood magic is prohibited today. But all that stands tall must eventually fall. Perhaps they foresaw their ruin, or perhaps their pride knew no bounds. But whatever the reason, the Magisters dared to open a magical portal into the Golden City at the heart of the Fade. They sought to usurp the Maker's throne, long left unattended in the Golden City after the Maker turned his back on his creations. They would storm heaven itself with their power and become as gods. This is what the Chantry, in its oft-exercised tendency to understate, refers to as the second sin. According to most versions of the tale, Magisters did indeed reach the Golden City and walked into the home of the Maker, where no living being before them had dared or been able to tread. But humanity is not meant to walk in heaven. Magisters were wicked with pride and other sins, and their presence tainted the Golden City. What once was a perfect holy citadel became a twisted home of darkness and nightmares. Magisters were expelled back through their gateway and cursed for their treachery. As the Golden City had been tainted, so were the Magisters twisted and transformed into things of darkness, the very first of the Darkspawn. The Golden City, once a shining beacon at the heart of the Fade, became the Black City, a reminder of all that man's pride had cost. Chapter 2. People today have little concept of the consequences of the second sin. Oh, believe me when I say that when asked, pious chantry-going folk will curse the use of foul magic, spitting and snapping their fingers. But none live today who actually remember the horror that was unleashed so very long ago. Whatever records might have existed regrettably did not survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have only the tales of survivors handed down through the murky ages and the dogma of the chantry to instruct us, and that is precious little indeed. I believe I am not understating when I say that the second sin unleashed the bane of all life upon Thedas. The Darkspawn are more virulent than the worst plague, a heartless force of nature that came into our world like an ill wind. We know from accounts of later blights, as these Darkspawn invasions came to be called, never has a more appropriate name existed, that the Darkspawn spread disease and famine wherever they tread. The earth itself is corrupted by their presence, the sky roiling with angry black clouds. I do not exaggerate, my friends, when I say that a mass gathering of Darkspawn is an omen of dread cataclysm. It is said that those cursed Magisters who became the first Darkspawn scratched at the very earth to find solace in the darkness of the dwarven deep roads, and there in the shadows they multiplied. Whether by intelligent design or by some last vestige of worship in their minds, they attempted to locate the old gods they had once served. They found what they sought. Demot, first among the old gods, once known as the Dragon of Silence before the Maker imprisoned him and all his brethren beneath the earth for the first sin, usurping the Maker's place in mankind's heart. The slumbering dragon awoke, freed from the Maker's prison by his twisted followers, and became corrupted himself. Demot was transformed into the first archdemon, his great and terrible power given will by a rotting, unholy mind. With the Darkspawn horde following, Demot rose and took wing in the skies once again, bringing ruin to the world the Maker had created. The old god had become the eye of a dark storm that would ravage the entire world. Chapter 3. The world during the First Blight was different from the world we know today. Aside from the civilized rule of the Imperium, humans as a race were largely barbarous and splintered, divided into clans and tribes and squabbling among ourselves for resources. At the same time, deep beneath Theda's great mountain ranges, spanned a dwarven culture as organized and advanced as ours was primitive. As the Darkspawn bubbled up to the surface from their underground layers, mankind first buckled and then fought back. The armies of Tevinter attempted to face down the multitudes of twisted creatures and the horrid rotting of the land around them, but they could not be everywhere at once. Human history remembers the First Blight as a time of terrible devastation, and those stories are accurate, but in our arrogance we often forget the price paid by the dwarves in their isolated mountain kingdoms. The dwarves faced far greater hordes than humanity as the Darkspawn challenged them for control of the underground. Despite the might and technology the dwarves brought to bear, the savage Darkspawn tore through them, first destroying the more remote taigs before swallowing up entire kingdoms. Think of it, an entire civilization lost in the space of decades. Compared to the near genocide that the dwarves face, what we humans call the First Blight must have seemed a mere skirmish. Against the Darkspawn, the dwarven lands have always borne the brunt of the fighting and the majority of the sacrifices. 4 dwarven kingdoms finally managed to combine their might and fight back, and that cooperation saved them. For the rest of their lands it was too late. The Darkspawn had taken the deep roads, the majestic underground passages that linked the dwarven lands throughout Thedas. Darkspawn could now attack anywhere on the surface through these tunnels. Humanity simply was not prepared for such an onslaught. It was clear that the warfare we knew would not avail us. We had to find a new way to fight. Thus came our salvation. Grey Wardens were born. Chapter 4. Founded at Weishaupt Fortress in the Anderfels, the Grey Wardens offered humanity hope in its darkest hour. Veterans of decades of battles with the Darkspawn came together. The best among them pledged to do whatever was necessary to stem the tide of darkness that swept across the land. These great humans, elves, and dwarves pooled their knowledge of the enemy and formed a united front to finally put a stop to the archdemon's rampage. And stop it they did. Ballads are still told today of the first Grey Warden charge into the waves of Darkspawn at the city of Nordbotten, each warden facing 10 or 20 Darkspawn at a time. Squadrons of Grey Wardens mounted on their mighty griffins, soaring through the blackened skies and battling the terrible archdemon with spear and spell. Oh, what a sight it must have been. Incredibly, the Grey Wardens won the first battle. They raised their arms in victory, and suddenly there was hope. Grey Wardens led the lands of men and the last stalwart defenders of the dwarven halls against the hordes of the archdemon Dumont for the next 100 years, gaining and losing ground, but never backing away. From all over Thedas, they recruited whoever possessed the skill and strength to raise the Grey Warden's banner, making no distinction between elven slave or human nobleman. Finally, nearly 2 centuries after the first god rose from the earth, Grey Wardens assembled the armies of men and dwarves at the Battle of Silent Plains. It was then that Dumont finally fell, and the First Blight ended. The Tevinter Imperium would face a new challenge with the coming of the Prophet Andraste. Thoughts of the Blight grew distant. With Dumont's defeat, the Darkspawn were considered no longer a threat, but with the wisdom of hindsight we know that conceit proved foolish indeed. The task of the Grey Wardens was far from over. That was The First Blight, as written by Brother Genitivi. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, I'll catch you later. But be sure to come back and visit